Hi, I'm Claire Fennell, and this is How to Make a Baguette. Day 1 is a prep day. It's all about mise en place and scaling. First, you're going to scale your pre-ferment, which is a pouliche for baguettes. It's a very wet pre-ferment, and it's 100% hydrated, which means the water and the flour are the same percent. It's a very lactic pre-ferment, which means it doesn't have an acidic, sour flavor. It's kind of a nutty flavor, and you're gonna mix the pouliche by hand with just the flour, yeast, and water, and that gets mixed on day 1 and then set overnight to ferment and double in size, about 6 to 16 hours. Your final dough, you're just gonna mise en place. You're gonna put the flour, malt, and salt in a paper bag and leave the water to be measured the next day, as well as the yeast. The water we have to figure out the temperature for, so we'll do that tomorrow once the pre-ferment is done and all the variables are taken care of. The flour in the dough acts as a binding ingredient. It provides structure for the bread and food for the yeast. The salt adds shelf life, flavor, as well as regulates the yeast production. And the malt is a sprouted barley milled into a fine powder. The water as well regulates the fermentation and the dough temperature. So in day 2, once you have your pre-ferment ready and everything mise en place, what we're going to do is calculate the water temp. And you do this by taking into consideration all of the variables, like the room temperature, the flour temperature, your friction factor. So this depends on which mixing method you're going to use, and we're going to use the improved, but I'll go over what those are in a minute. And you also have to include the variable of the pre-ferment temperature. So the first thing you do is take the pre-ferment temperature, take all of these temperatures, and you're going to multiply your desired dough temperature, which is always between 75 and 78, by 4, since there are 4 variables, and then you're going to subtract each of the numbers that you get to find your water temperature, and then you're going to measure your water, and then you can start your mixing for the day. So when you're mixing the dough, first you're going to add all the ingredients into the mixer and go on first speed. You're going to add the pouliche, the water, yeast, and dry ingredients that you all measured the day before on first speed for just as long as it takes for it all to be incorporated and combined, occasionally scraping down the bowl. And then you're going to go to second speed once everything is incorporated and combined, and you're going to mix until medium gluten development is achieved, and you can test that by pulling gluten windows and making sure it doesn't rip too easily. So we're using the improved method, but there are a few other methods that you can use for mixing. There's short and there's intense, and the difference between these mixing methods are the outcomes and the way that they're done. So short is the most desirable. It creates the most open, creamy crumb, and it has excellent flavor. It's done by hand, which means it takes a lot of manpower and a lot of work. So it's the least used, but the most desirable. Improved is the next best. You have a medium-sized crumb with an almost creamy color, like you see in the short, and it has good flavor. Not as excellent as short, but still good flavor. This is done by a mixer, but is not using as much, it doesn't incorporate as much friction as the intense method, so it's a better product in the end. And then intense is also done by a mixer. It incorporates a lot of friction, which decreases the color, so it looks more white than creamy, as you see in the other two, and it lacks flavor and creates a really tight, closed crumb. So you see that in like decorative doughs, where there's not an open structure of the bread. It needs to be more firm and, I guess, durable, more than open and airy. Now once you finish mixing, you're going to take your dough temperature right out of the mixer, and it should be between your desired dough temperature of 75 to 78. You're then going to spray your proofing bin, and you're going to take the dough from the mixer and you're going to organize it into a nice smooth top and place it in the bin. and then you're just going to cover it with the lid and allow that to rest. So your dough is going to rest and ferment for a total of 90 minutes with one fold after the first 45 minutes. And the benefits of fermentation, they give your bread a better quality, a better flavor, longer shelf life. Fermentation is really the way that flavor develops in bread. It allows the yeast to mature more and adds more flavor. And your fold, after the 45 minutes, is just going to be 5 down on top of each other, on top of itself. And you're going to fold it down in the bin. And then once you get to the end, you're going to turn it and you're going to set it nicely on its seam back the other way in the bin, and then cover it back up and allow it to rest for another 45 minutes to complete its fermentation. So after the 90 minutes total is up, we want to take your dough and flour your table because it's a wetter dough. You're going to flip your dough out of the bin onto the table, the floured table, and you kind of want to spread it, organize it so that it's kind of a rectangular-ish shape so it's easier to divide more evenly. And then you're going to degas that dough with the palm of your hand. Just degas it so that there's not a lot of air bubbles, And then you're going to divide those pieces, measure them out on a scale into about 400 grams each. They should be about the shape of a square, but anything close is pretty much good. It works. So once you have your 400 gram square pieces of dough measured out, you're going to take them on your table. It still has a little bit of flour, not too much. And you're going to pre-shape. And pre-shaping is the first shaping of the dough into the baguette, kind of general shape before you have to do one more rest and then a final shaping. And for the pre-shaping, all you're gonna do is roll it down using your side of your hand so you're not pushing down on top of the dough. You're gonna tuck it under and just keep doing that. Should be about 5 times until you have your last seam, and roll it over on your seam, and you're going to have it sit on your seam in a moist body bag so that the gluten can relax and you can do your final shaping and it'll get long enough. Otherwise, if you don't let it have another rest and the gluten can't relax, you won't be able to get the maximum length for your baguette, the proper length, which won't look good when you bake it. So after the 20 minutes of rest in the body bag, you're going to take your dough, take it out of the body bag, place it down, and you're going to degas that so you have the proper shape. You want kind of a rectangular shape. And then for the final shaping, what you're going to do is you're going to fold the top down so there's about inch and a half an inch between that left at the bottom, just using the base of your hand right here to close that. And then you're going to flip it over so you have the lip at the top, and you're going to fold it down to meet in the middle. Don't go all the way over. And you're going to use the base of your palm again to do that. So you have a little seam in the middle, right there. And then you're going to degas that a little bit more because now you have more dough piled on top of each other and there's a little bit of air incorporation. And you're going to take your thumb to push in and fold over, closing it at the ends, so making a seam right there with the palm of your hand again. You're just going to close that up. So you have the seam there, a nice seam. And what you're going to do from there is you're going to roll it out with the seam facing up You're going to roll it out with a rocking motion. I'm going to do it with one hand just because my papers are moving. But typically you would do it with two, starting here, and you would roll it out. And you want to kind of rock back and forth and use the table more than your strength so that you can get the most out of what you're doing quicker. You don't want to go over it too many times, otherwise you're going to tighten the crumb structure and you're going to lose that open crumb that you were looking for. And at the ends, you're going to roll down a little bit harder so that you get the pointed end of a baguette that you typically see. Typically you only want to go over it once or twice, but since I'm only doing one hand, that's why I'm going over it a few more times. And then once you have your baguette shape with your pointed ends, you're going to lay it in a couche, which is just a resting thing. It's got a piece of cloth down, and you want to make sure that you have some flour on it, so you have a little bit of flour there, and you're going to lay your baguette on, and you have to make sure you have privacy in between each baguette. So you're going to pull it up, and then your next baguette would go right there, and so on. And typically we do about 6 baguettes per couche. And then after they're all on, we cover them up with the rest of the fabric, and you're going to set them back in the body bag, the moist body bag, for their final rest of 45 minutes before baking.
Okay.
So our next step is loading. You're going to take after the 45 minutes, you're going to take your baguettes out of the body bag, off the couche, and I think I forgot to mention before, but when you're placing them on the couche, you want to make sure they're seam up, not seam down. So when you're transporting them onto the loader, which is what you use to put them into the oven, you have it seam up, and you're going to take a wooden board, which I'm just going to use my hand for now, but typically we have long, thin wooden boards that we'll use, and we'll flip it over, and then using the couche, you'll flip it back over onto the wooden loader so that it's seam up, so that when you place it onto the loader, it's seam down. It kind of rolls off seam down, and then that's on the loader, and you'll line them up so that you have space in between, and then we get a score.
Is that too close?
Yeah.
So for scoring, we pretend that there are 2 parallel lines running down the top of the baguette, and you want to score like this, not like these. So staying in between the parallel lines, you're going to start from point A and make lines overlapping. They're about 3 inches long and 1/8 of an inch deep, using just the forward front edge of the knife with the little blade, and you're going in at a 45-degree angle, not 90 degrees, otherwise all the gas will be let out. 45 degrees.
Go. So of course that was
So after the baguettes have been scored, you want to load them into the oven and bake them with the oven set at 470 degrees on top and the 445 on the bottom. And you're going to set the steam at 0.20 for 20 minutes and then bake it. And the steam serves to add volume to the bread, it improves the crust color, and it prevents a tough, like unedible crust from forming. And then, after the 20 minutes is up, you're going to check your baguettes and see their color. And typically, you're going to bake it for an additional 3 to 5 minutes, just until they're the golden brown that you want them to be. And in the oven, the Maillard reaction occurs, which is just the heat in the oven causing the simple sugars to react in the presence of proteins, and it breaks down those simple sugars, resulting in that golden brown color. After the 20 minutes and then the 3 to 5 minutes without the steam occur of the baking, you're going to take them out of the oven and you're going to cool them. We don't cut baguettes right out of the oven because the cooling allows the flavor to be enhanced and allows the crumb to finish setting. If you cut them too soon, they won't be ready, they won't be fully set, and you won't get as a desirable result. Finally, we have storage after cooling. We want to store the baguettes in paper bags. This prevents the bread from getting really soft. The paper bags do more to not hold in moisture as plastic bags would, and the moisture that you would find in a plastic bag builds up on the bread and it makes it soft and not as tasty. And after that, that's it. You can just enjoy the bread. Thanks for watching. Happy baking!